Scene script. Have you ever wondered why a static image appears to move? Let's explore the magic of the moving spiral illusion. It's a wonder of visual trickery that leaves us questioning our own eyes. This illusion seems to rotate before your very eyes, but is it really moving? Well, contrary to what you see, the image is perfectly static. It's all a mind game, my friends. The magic behind this illusion lies in the arrangement of contrasting colors and shapes. When these elements are set in a specific pattern, our brain gets fooled into perceiving motion. That's right, the spiral isn't moving, but your brain thinks it is. It's a fascinating display of how easily our senses can be deceived. Now you might be wondering, how does this happen? Well, our brain is a complex organ that interprets visual information based on patterns, colors, and contrasts. It's constantly trying to make sense of the world around us. And in this case, it's being tricked by a cleverly designed optical illusion. But why does our brain get fooled? Think of it this way. Our brains are wired to recognize patterns and predict outcomes based on previous experiences. When we see contrasting colors and shapes arranged in a particular way, our brain assumes there's motion, as it's often the case in the natural world. So in a sense, the moving spiral illusion is exploiting our brain's predictive abilities. It's quite fascinating, isn't it? Optical illusions like the moving spiral challenge our understanding of perception. They reveal the complexities of how our brains process visual information and remind us of the intriguing ways our brains make sense of the world. So remember, it's not the image that's moving, it's your brain trying to make sense of the world. The next time you come across the moving spiral, you'll know it's not just an image, but a fascinating insight into the workings of your brain. So enjoy the illusion, appreciate the magic, and remember, not everything is as it appears to be. Now let's move on to a 2D drawing that defies logic. Welcome to the impossible triangle illusion. This illusion is a classic example of how perspective and angles can play with our perception. At first glance, the impossible triangle appears to be a three-dimensional figure, but upon closer inspection, you'll realize that it's a two-dimensional sketch. The impossible triangle is a paradox, a figure that can't possibly exist in the real world, not because it's physically impossible, but because it defies the rules of Euclidean geometry. So, how does this illusion work? Well, it all boils down to the way our brains process visual information. Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of the world around us, interpreting patterns and shapes based on the visual information they receive. And depth is an essential part of this interpretation. In real life, depth perception helps us navigate the world. We use cues like size, overlap, and perspective to judge depth and distance. But in the case of the impossible triangle, these cues are manipulated to create the illusion of a three-dimensional figure. The triangle's sides seem to twist and turn, leading your eyes in an endless loop. This clever use of angles and perspective tricks your brain into perceiving depth where there isn't any, creating a 3D illusion from a 2D figure. It's worth noting that the impossible triangle is not actually a triangle in the traditional sense. Instead, it's a composite of three separate shapes that, when viewed from a particular angle, appear to form a continuous loop. As a result, the triangle seems to exist in a perpetual state of impossibility, hence its name. So, there you have it. The impossible triangle isn't impossible after all, it's all a matter of perspective. It's a beautiful example of how our perceptions can be molded and manipulated, challenging our understanding of reality and proving once again that seeing is not always believing. The impossible triangle isn't impossible after all, it's all a matter of perspective. Ready for more? Let's dive into the illusion of the floating cube. This fascinating visual trickery presents us with what seems to be a three-dimensional cube hovering in thin air. Yet, it's nothing more than a two-dimensional image. So how does this illusion work? The secret lies in the artful use of shading and gradients. Our brains are wired to interpret visual cues from the world around us. One of these cues is shading. When light falls on an object, it creates shadows and highlights that our brains interpret as depth and form. This is how we perceive a three-dimensional world. Now, when shading is applied to a two-dimensional image, our brains still interpret it as depth, making the image appear three-dimensional. Gradients play a similar role. A gradient is a gradual change from one color to another. On a flat surface, if one part is lighter and gradually becomes darker, our brains interpret this as a curve or a slope. Again, this adds to the illusion of depth and form. The floating cube illusion combines these two elements. The cube's edges are drawn with gradients, making them appear rounded. The faces of the cube are shaded, with one side darker to suggest it's in shadow. Together, these elements create the illusion of a three-dimensional cube floating above a flat surface. The floating cube is a wonderful demonstration of how easily our brains can be tricked into seeing depth where there isn't any. It's a reminder that our perception of the world isn't always accurate, and how what we see is a construct of our brains based on the visual cues it receives. So the next time you see a cube popping out of a flat surface, remember it's just a clever use of shading and gradients. It's not magic, it's science, and a testament to the incredible processing power of our brains. Finally, let's take a look at the color-changing dots illusion. This illusion is a delightful demonstration of how our gaze can manipulate what we perceive. Don't believe me? Just watch the dots closely. As you focus on the center of the image, the dots around the periphery mysteriously seem to change color. However, the truth is they aren't changing at all. You may wonder if the colors aren't changing, then why do our eyes perceive it that way? This is where the magic of after images comes into play. After images are essentially optical illusions that occur after you've been staring at an image for a while. When you finally look away, you continue to see a faint version of the image. In the case of the color-changing dots illusion, after images are created when our eyes adapt to a specific color. But how does this adaptation process work? When you stare at a color for a prolonged period, the photoreceptor cells in your eyes that are sensitive to that color start to become fatigued. As a result, they stop sending as strong a signal to your brain. When you then shift your gaze, these tired cells continue to send a weaker signal, causing you to perceive the complementary color of the one you were just looking at. This is why, in our illusion, the dots appear to change color as you shift your gaze away from the center. So when you're staring at the color-changing dots illusion, you're actually witnessing a miniature light show put on by your own eyes and brain. The colors aren't changing. It's your eyes adapting to a particular color, and your brain doing the rest. This goes to show how our visual perception is not just about what our eyes see, but also about how our brain interprets what we see. It's a beautiful dance of biology and psychology, and optical illusions like the color-changing dots provide a fascinating glimpse into this intricate dance. So the next time you're looking at a seemingly magical optical illusion, remember the magic is not just in the image, but also in your own perception. Optical illusions are fascinating, aren't they? They challenge our senses and showcase the wonders of visual perception. Indeed, the moving spiral with its juxtaposition of contrasting colors and shapes fooled our brains into perceiving motion where there was none. These illusions reveal the captivating ways our brains interpret visual information, creating a sense of movement that's purely a product of our perception. Then came the impossible triangle, an intriguing 2D drawing that seemed to form a three-dimensional shape, defying all logic. It reminded us how perspective and angles can play tricks on us, challenging our brain's cues for depth perception and leaving us with an intriguing visual paradox. Who could forget the floating cube? A simple 2D image that appeared to pop out of the screen, thanks to the clever use of shading and gradients. Our brains were once again tricked into perceiving depth and dimension, illustrating how these elements can transform flat images into seemingly three-dimensional objects. Finally, the color-changing dots. As we stared at the center, the dots seemed to change color, a delightful illusion that underscored the impact of our gaze on visual perception. It was a captivating demonstration of after images and how our eyes and brain collaborate to process visual information. Each of these illusions amazed us in their unique ways, didn't they? It's intriguing to ponder which one left you most astounded. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found these optical illusions as fascinating as I did, do give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more mind-bending content and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, keep questioning what you see and embrace the magic of optical illusions. Signing off from Did You Know?